In today's story, we'll hear about a nurse whose life took an unexpected turn after she lost her job, but saved a life just hours later. But that's just the beginning. What followed next was beyond belief. Stay tuned to hear this unbelievable journey and make sure to subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Sarah had just clocked in for her usual shift at St. Michael's Hospital. The air was thick with the hustle and bustle of doctors, nurses, and staff moving quickly through the busy corridors. It was an ordinary day, but something in the air felt off. Suddenly, the emergency doors flew open with a loud crash, and paramedics rushed in, pushing a stretcher with a man who had sustained serious gunshot wounds. "He needs immediate help," one of the paramedics shouted. The emergency room fell silent as everyone turned to see the urgency of the situation. The man on the stretcher was in terrible shape. Blood soaked through his clothes and he was barely conscious, his skin an unhealthy shade of pale. Sarah immediately stepped forward, instinctively ready to help. But just before she could get close, the hospital administrator's voice stopped her. "No police clearance, no treatment," the administrator said, crossing his arms and glaring at Sarah. The whole room went still. Sarah could feel her heart racing. She was torn. The man needed help, but following hospital protocol meant she could lose everything. For a moment, Sarah hesitated. Her mind raced with thoughts of losing her job, her livelihood, her stability. But then, the sound of the man's weakening breaths snapped her out of it. She couldn't just stand there. She had to act. Without a second thought, she grabbed the medical tray and put on her gloves. "I don't care," she whispered to herself. "I'm saving this man's life." And with that, Sarah rushed into action. The room fell silent as she worked tirelessly, each movement precise and calculated. She cleared his airway and applied pressure to stop the bleeding. The heart monitor beeped erratically, but Sarah didn't flinch. As Sarah worked, her hands trembled but stayed steady. Her mind was focused solely on the patient, ignoring the disapproving glares from her colleagues and the quiet tension in the room. Each second felt like an eternity. She stitched the wounds with precision, the man's condition slowly improving. Just as Sarah thought she might have done enough, a slow, mocking applause echoed from the doorway. The hospital administrator, arms crossed, stood there watching her. "Well done, nurse. You saved him, but you're fired," he said coldly. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the words sinking in. She had just lost her job for doing the right thing. The emergency room, which had always felt like home to her, suddenly felt suffocating. She had given everything to her work, and now it was gone, just like that. Sarah stood in the emergency room for a few moments, her mind reeling from the sudden loss. She had just done the right thing, saved a life, and now her career was over. Her heart felt heavy as she removed her hospital badge, staring at it for a moment before placing it on the counter. It was hard to accept, but she had no choice. She walked out of the emergency room, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Outside, the city was alive, busy as ever, but Sarah felt detached, as though she were walking through a dream. She couldn't believe how fast everything had changed. Sarah walked aimlessly, her steps taking her to a nearby park. She needed a moment to clear her mind. The weight of the day's events was catching up to her. Just as she sat down on a bench trying to gather her thoughts, a voice cried out for help. She turned to see a small crowd gathering around an elderly man who had collapsed. He was clutching his chest, struggling to breathe. Without a second thought, Sarah rushed over. The man was having a heart attack. Sarah knew what she had to do. She immediately began CPR, pushing hard on the man's chest, trying to restart his heart. The crowd watched in stunned silence, some whispering, others staring in disbelief at her calm determination. Minutes passed, but Sarah didn't give up. Her arms burned from the effort, but she kept pushing, refusing to stop. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man gasped for air. His heart had started beating again. The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah stepped back as paramedics arrived to take over. The crowd began murmuring with admiration. But one man in the crowd caught her attention. He was tall, dressed in a sharp black suit, and his gaze was intense, yet filled with gratitude. "Miss, you saved his life," he said, stepping toward her. "May I have your contact information?" Sarah, still shaken, was too tired to think clearly. She reached into her pocket and handed him the only thing she had left, her hospital ID. The man took the ID, his expression serious yet respectful. "Thank you," he said, then turned and walked away. Sarah watched him leave, a sense of unease filling her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was far from ordinary. Little did Sarah know, this act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. Isaac Combs, the man she had just saved, was far more influential than she could have ever imagined. Later that evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment, feeling the weight of the day's events pressing down on her. Her job was gone, her future uncertain, and she couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that had settled in her chest. She sat in silence, staring at the small lamp flickering in the corner of the room. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Sarah was startled. She wasn't expecting anyone. The knock was firm, persistent, as if someone had an urgent message to deliver. After a brief moment of hesitation, she stood up and opened the door. Standing in the doorway was none other than Isaac Combs, the man she had saved earlier that day. Beside him was a man in a sharp suit, holding a briefcase. Isaac's presence was commanding, and Sarah felt a mixture of surprise and confusion. What was he doing here? "Sarah," Isaac said, his voice calm but firm, "we need to talk." He stepped inside, and Sarah stepped aside to let him in, still trying to process everything. Isaac didn't waste any time. "I don't take chances with people who saved my life," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "You've shown me that you have integrity. That's rare, and I respect it." He gestured to his assistant, who handed Sarah a large envelope. Sarah hesitated, unsure of what was happening. She opened the envelope, and her eyes widened as she pulled out a check for $500,000. She gasped, stunned by the amount. I can't accept this," she stammered. Isaac smiled, his eyes steady and confident. "You can, and you will," he said firmly. "This is not charity. This is a reward for doing what's right. I want you to think about your future. You've earned this." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she looked at the check. She never imagined that one act of kindness, one moment of decision, would lead to something like this. But Isaac wasn't finished yet. "I own a network of private hospitals," Isaac said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "And I need someone with real values, someone who won't bend to pressure. I want you to head a new initiative I'm starting. You'll be in charge of a new medical project, one that can change lives." Sarah felt a surge of disbelief. Just hours ago, she had lost her job, her security, and now she was being offered the chance to lead a groundbreaking medical initiative. Was this really happening? Isaac saw the doubt in her eyes and smiled reassuringly. "You don't have to decide right now. Take your time, think it through. But just know this, you have the opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives, and I'll be right here to help you every step of the way." Isaac and his assistant left, leaving Sarah standing at the door, her mind racing. She was filled with a mixture of emotions: gratitude, confusion, and a sense of awe. Could she really take on such a responsibility? Could she really lead something that would impact so many lives? The next few days were a whirlwind for Sarah. She couldn't stop thinking about the offer Isaac had made. She couldn't shake the thought of the $500,000 check and the promise of a new future. But the weight of the decision weighed heavily on her heart. Sarah spent hours alone, walking around the city, trying to clear her mind. The question gnawed at her. Could she really lead something that big? Could she take on such a responsibility, knowing that people's lives would depend on her decisions? One evening, as she sat in a small cafe by herself, trying to make sense of it all, she received a call from Isaac. His voice was calm but insistent. "Sarah, I know this is a big decision, but I believe in you. I've seen what you can do. You're the right person for this. Don't doubt yourself." His words struck a chord deep within Sarah. She had been so focused on the weight of the responsibility that she had forgotten about the passion that had always driven her to become a nurse in the first place: her desire to help people. The next morning, after hours of deep thought, Sarah made her decision. She called Isaac and told him she was ready to take the leap. "I'm in," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I want to make a difference. I want to help people." Isaac was pleased but didn't waste any time. "Good," he said. "We start immediately. There's no time to waste. I'll have my team prepare everything. Meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m. The next day, Sarah arrived at Isaac's office, a sleek, modern building that looked like something out of a movie. Inside, everything was pristine and orderly, a stark contrast to the chaos she had known in the hospital. Isaac was waiting for her, and with him were several key members of his team. They had a plan, and they were ready to put it into motion. Sarah listened carefully, her mind racing with possibilities. As the meeting progressed, Sarah found herself feeling more and more confident. She realized that this wasn't just about leading a medical project. It was about giving people the chance to live healthier, better lives. It was about something far bigger than herself. By the end of the meeting, Sarah was ready to take on the challenge. Isaac's team had outlined everything she needed to do, and she was excited to get started. This was her chance to create something meaningful, to make a real difference in the world. As she left the office, Sarah felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was no longer afraid. This was the moment she had been waiting for, and she was ready to embrace it. The first few weeks in her new role were a whirlwind. Sarah dove headfirst into the work, meeting with doctors, medical staff, and administrators. Isaac's team had set up everything for her, the resources, the plans, and the support she needed to succeed. But even with all the preparation, Sarah still felt a deep sense of responsibility. The weight of people's lives was in her hands, and she had to get it right. One evening, as she sat in her office reviewing the latest reports, her phone rang. It was Isaac. "Sarah," he said, his voice full of energy, "we've made huge progress. The new medical initiative is gaining traction, and people are starting to notice. But there's one thing we need to discuss." Sarah listened carefully. Isaac's voice was always reassuring, but she could sense the urgency behind his words. "We've received an offer from a competitor," Isaac continued. "One of the largest hospital networks in the country wants to buy our initiative, take it over, and run it their way. This is a critical moment, Sarah. I need to know if you're ready to fight for what we've built." Sarah paused for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. This wasn't just about running a hospital network anymore. This was about protecting something she had worked so hard to create. It was about standing firm, no matter what. "I'm ready," Sarah said firmly. "I've worked too hard for this to let it go. We'll find a way to make it work." Isaac smiled, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "I knew I made the right choice," he said. "Let's get to work." Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Isaac's team worked tirelessly to strengthen their initiative. They met with investors, organized presentations, and built strategic partnerships to protect their vision. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when Sarah doubted herself, but she pushed through, always thinking about the people they were helping. One night, after an intense meeting with potential investors, Sarah sat in her office, exhausted but satisfied. She knew they had made great strides, but she also knew the real test was yet to come. The phone rang again. It was Isaac. "Sarah, we've got an offer," Isaac said, his voice calm but serious. "The competitor wants to meet with us. They're willing to negotiate." Sarah leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The competitor had seen the value in what they were building. But would they be able to strike the right deal, or would they lose everything they had worked for? "We'll meet with them," Sarah said, determination in her voice. "But we're not giving up on our vision. Not now, not ever." The following week, Sarah and Isaac's team arrived at a high-rise building for the crucial meeting. The competitor's representatives were already there, waiting for them. The tension in the air was palpable, and Sarah could feel the weight of the moment. As they entered the boardroom, Sarah couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between their two teams. The competitor's representatives wore tailored suits and exuded confidence, while Sarah's team felt more modest, but their passion and determination were undeniable. The meeting started with pleasantries, but it quickly became clear that the competitors were trying to undermine everything they had worked for. They offered Sarah and Isaac a buyout, suggesting that they could run the project more efficiently, more profitably. Sarah listened carefully, her mind racing. The offer was tempting, but it didn't align with her vision. She had always believed in putting people first, not just profits. This was a chance to build something meaningful, not just a business. "I'm not here to sell out," Sarah said, her voice steady but firm. "This isn't just about making money. It's about making a difference in people's lives. And that's what we're going to do, with or without you." Isaac nodded in agreement. his eyes never leaving the competitors. He wasn't backing down, and neither was Sarah. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. The competitors' representatives tried to counter, offering even more money and better terms, but Sarah remained resolute. She was not willing to compromise her values. "We appreciate the offer, but it's not what we're looking for," Isaac said. "We're committed to our mission, and we're going to make it work, with or without you." The tension in the room was thick, but Sarah felt a sense of clarity. This was the right choice, even if it was the harder one. She was fighting for what she believed in, for a future that was focused on helping people, not just making money. After what felt like hours, the meeting ended. The competitor had no choice but to walk away. They couldn't break Sarah's resolve, and they certainly couldn't buy her vision. As they left the building, Sarah and Isaac exchanged a look of mutual respect. They had won, not just a battle, but the war for their values. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," Isaac said, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "This was a turning point, not just for the initiative, but for you. You've shown what you stand for." Sarah smiled back, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. This was just the beginning of her journey. There were still challenges ahead, but she knew she was ready. As they walked out into the crisp night air, Sarah knew one thing for sure: she was on the right path. And nothing, not money, not competition, would ever change that.